Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Q&A. For anybody watching on video, please excuse me if I look like Frankenstein and can't move my neck. I ended up pulling a muscle or something, so I'm just gonna look really funny for this one. But anyway, let's jump into the Q&As. I'll start with the newest post first this week. Cameron Earl said that he received his new G-SCART switch and was wondering if it's safe or at least not harmful to stick it on a carpeted floor behind the setup, or if it's instead should he mount it on the wall or find something to rest it on. So I wouldn't call that dangerous, but it's not really the best practice. Carpeted floor, you're going to have static electricity, dust could build up, which if a film of dust builds up over it, it could create more heat. It's not dangerous, but if you have the ability to move it off the floor, I definitely would. I always do. I do have it on the bottom shelf very often, which I guess even that isn't the best, but it's still better than just being directly on the floor. So I guess an easy way to answer that is if being on the carpet is absolutely by far the best solution for you, maybe put a big piece of cardboard underneath, as long as you can't see it and it's super ugly or anything. But if not, at least try to get it one step up above the floor, just to make sure all the little things that probably won't hurt, but it's good practice to not have to worry about them. David Kenyon had two pretty good questions. He has a 27-inch Panasonic CRT that is a slightly darker picture in the upper right-hand corner. Would recapping fix this, or is it something else? That could be a lot of different things. You could need convergence strips. It could be a recap, but it's one of those things where I would take pictures of the exact issue and then try to find people who've worked on similar model TVs and see if somebody else has seen this exact thing, because just the description of a slightly darker picture could be a bunch of stuff, and I wouldn't feel comfortable giving advice about that, not having enough experience with that. The other question that you had is, with my recent experience recapping consumer CRTs, is it really worth the time to recap them? So once again, I don't have a full answer for this. So yes, definitely, it's without a doubt worth recapping certain caps. But I don't know if it was worth recapping the entire TV. And I think a good example of this is the TV I had was already in really excellent condition. And I did notice a difference after I did the recap. And I will absolutely get a lot more years out of this TV now because I did the recap. So that, as a general question, that's really up to you. Do you enjoy doing these things? Do you want to know that you've just extended the life of a good CRT? But as far as, is it really worth it? If I was going to RGB mod this TV, half the board is now useless to me, because the only thing that would really matter is whatever caps drive the CRT and the power board itself, as well as anything from the jungle chip on. Now, I'm oversimplifying, so bear with me with this one. So in the case of an RGB modded TV, where the only input you're ever going to use is the RGB input, obviously if you're going to open it up, make sure no caps are leaking. You don't want to cause damage. But if I were able to find out which caps are directly related to power and the CRT, I would concentrate on those first, because if you never use any of the other inputs, the entire video in circuit really doesn't matter from the cap perspective. So that's pretty much my general feelings on that. It might change as time goes on, but yeah, I mean, if it's something you enjoy doing and you just want to extend the life of your consumer TV, then yeah, go for it. But if as far as just chasing the best quality, you will get an improvement. I'm not really sure how much, and I would definitely try to focus on the caps that really needed it, power and stuff like that. Dave Sobel wanted to know if I had planned on doing a list of critical repairs to be done on all consoles. And I had, but I hadn't thought of it that way. So I think I'm going to take your suggestion, talk to the other people that are working on the site, and see if everybody else agrees. But I think having one page to click on, critical repairs, so anybody new to the scene who hasn't been following could just click on this page and understand that there are certain things like a Game Gear, like that one cap on the Xbox, that it's pretty much mandatory nowadays that you have to work on it. So that's a good idea. I hadn't really thought of it that way before, but I'm going to see if that's something I could work on. Next, Eric Hurley had a few questions. He said he just ordered a Neo Geo MV1C board, a 161-in-1 multi-cart, and pre-ordered the Haas Supergun, and was wondering if I had any controller or stick suggestions for this setup. He's brand new to arcade gaming, so he's just wondering what to look out for, and if he needs any controller adapters with the HASS, etc. So I'll start with the controllers. I love the Vuelix. This was Sabin Arturo's old stick, and this was a suggestion by Jose where, they're gigantic. I mean, I shouldn't have something this large in a New York apartment, but the first time I used it, just as an example, I mean, this is kind of a beat up old stick. And I played through Mortal Kombat 1, my favorite fighting game, and I immediately got through the first 2 mirror matches without dying. And I think I have it on not like the second hardest level. So, that alone should be a testament to both the balance, the quality of it. Sorry, I'm out of focus, but I got another stick coming. The other ones that I do like are the more reasonably sized ones like this. So they're just basically like the Street Fighter arcade sticks. For anybody listening audio only, I'm sorry. I'm showing some arcade sticks and bumping the mic while I do it. But yeah, I mean, those are way more reasonably priced, reasonable to find. But the one thing that I always do to both of them is I add a DB15 controller port in the back. And the reason for that is then you could just take any DB15 cable and plug that directly into the HASS. And it's basically you're using like the 6-button Neo Geo controller, which isn't an official standard, but it works. So that way, if you think about it, you could buy an original Neo Geo stick and it'll just work with it, but they tend to be expensive, and I actually prefer these. Now, I'm not a professional gamer. I never pretend to be. I'm just, everybody's hands are different. It's just like musical instruments or anything else. You really just got to pick whatever's best for you. But I like stuff like that. I try to always wire it direct so I don't need a controller adapter at all. But you're going to want to pick up one of the undammed adapters because that will allow you to use pretty much any USB device as your controller, and it's fully reprogrammable. I mean, it's something that I would consider a necessity if you've bought the HASS, just because it opens up a world of controller options for you. So unless you already own a bunch of arcade sticks and those are the only things you'll ever use, I think everybody should probably pick up one of the undammed adapters. One of the most recent posts on Retro RGB was about the new firmware for it, so you could find all of the links easily. So that's pretty much sums it up for the arcade stick part. Sorry for bumping the mics and all the focus stuff, but wanted to really just kind of give visual examples. As for your other questions, you said you assume you can hook up the HASS to a PVM or OSSC using a simple 8-pin mini DIN to SCART cable. Yes. So both major cable manufacturers sell it. There's the Pack-a-Punch version from Retro Gaming Cables, and there's the coax version from Retro Access, but I think they're also coming out with a Fortraflex version as well. So yes, basic, just straight up, nothing inside the cable. You could make your own if you really wanted to as well. The only things I'll add to your setup, so first of all, the HASS is amazing. It's still my favorite super gun. I still think it's the best one out there. So you don't have to worry about safety or quality with that one, unless you yourself make some changes and break it, which fair, right? The only thing I'd look out for is the 161 and 1 multi-cart. Make sure it's one of the newer ones that has the voltage issues fixed. And just keep in mind, it's still not the greatest option. So it's much safer than the other one. The other one I wouldn't use at all unless you tried to do some kind of mods to it to make sure that it wasn't sending wrong voltage. Because unlike the whole flash cart gate, at the end of the day, a lot of those carts that don't have the correct voltage going to them, the worst thing that could happen is it lowers the life of the cart. But with the original 161 and 1 multi, that could lower the life of the Neo Geo. And that's why I was so hard on those. So hopefully that pretty much sums up everything for that situation, but I think you're really going to enjoy this setup. As long as you don't mind tinkering a little, because arcade boards always require some messing around with. I'm really glad I got mine. It was actually Smoke Monster that eventually pushed me to get all this stuff, and once I started hanging out with the New York crew, you kind of have to, because they're all a blast to hang out with, and they all love playing arcade games, so I want to make sure that I keep my chops up, because And it's a weird thing, but I never mind losing if it's because the player I'm playing against is better than me. But if I'm not used to a controller, or if I bring some crappy arcade stick in and I realize that I'm losing because the equipment I brought is subpar, then I just get angry at myself. So that's why I made sure to invest in a couple of sticks that I really love, so that when I head down and play with all the guys at the tournaments, when I get my butt whooped, at least I know I tried my best. But hopefully I summed everything up for you. Chris Syme posted some pretty good opinions regarding the MCable, which I guess a lot of people have been talking about lately because we did talk about it in the Retro Roundtable, but they also have their MCable Classic Edition coming out. And I try really hard when it comes to things that are opinion based to be fair. It's just one of these things where if your eyes prefer the effect that it does, then it's worth it. And you're willing to spend over $100, then it's worth it to you. The only thing I care about in situations like this are the hard facts. So it doesn't add any lag, at least the gaming edition didn't. So that's it. So go ahead and use it, and if your eyes prefer it, and if you feel like it's worth all that money, great. It's not something I would use, but I'm not saying that to like insult anybody doing it. It's like Coke versus Pepsi, right? Whatever your eyes prefer. So Chris posted some great opinions that I agree with if anybody wants to check them out. But overall, I just personally couldn't recommend it only because of the price. Because in the situations that I saw it, the most of the time it did nothing. A couple of times it did definitely look better, for things like PlayStation 2 and stuff like that. And I guess I did see a little weirdness with it here and there, but not very often. But just for $100 for a few times, you get a slightly cooler image. I don't know. I don't think the product's for me, but I guess it all depends on the type of games you play, what monitor you're hooking it up to. That's a good point that Chris made as well, is are you using it on a 1080p monitor versus a 4K? So great opinions, but it's hard for me to stuff like that because I don't want to come out and go, I love it or I hate it, because it really is just about your eyes and how you like to play these games. So thanks for the opinions. I always try to be careful with stuff like that. I'm also trying to get the developers of MCable on for an interview. I really don't think they'll do one, though. They like talking to rappers, not talking to nerds. And I'm not being silly. Look that up. That's actually true. Chris from Belgium had a pretty interesting question. He wants a capture card that works on his laptop. That it's really the only point of it is to test consoles, and it's mostly 6th gen consoles. So in that case, quality means nothing. Processing 240p as 480i means nothing. I would just go on Amazon and get the cheapest possible capture card, see if it works, and if it does, cool. If you're looking for something that's at least decent quality, I'm going to show something that I haven't tested yet, so please don't take this, take this with a grain of salt. But I bought this AverMedia capture card because it's under $100. It's the AverMedia GL310, and it's got HDMI input and output, and it does 1080p 60. I'm assuming with colors greatly compressed which is fine. I'm going to be using this to do a video on just basic capture, just showing people who want to get started, who are jumping into this amongst a bunch of other nerds who have been doing it for a while. Like here in mid-2019, here's a really good, cheap way to get started. And I'm going to use this as an example, and I also agree with Mr. Pete 1985. I'm going to be using the RetroTink 2X through this. So assuming that all goes well, I really haven't tested this at all yet. So, don't go buy one, or if you buy one, understand that you might have to return it. But if you're looking for quality, I would step up to an HDMI capture card that doesn't suck, and that's what I think this is. So, it's not going to be for taking comparison shots. It's not going to be for professional streamers who really want the best quality. But I think mixing this with the RetroTink, now you're definitely under $200 to cover HDMI, composite, S-Video, and component. And if you get Mike's upcoming component to or RGB to component adapter, that should be fairly cheap as well. So if you're just looking for good, Not the best, but definitely not shitty. I think this is a better option overall. I do understand that now you're looking two things around, a retro Tink and one of these, but just remember that the Tink 2X can be powered by your laptop, so maybe that saves you a cable or something. So I guess, hopefully those are two decent solutions. Number one, just buy the cheapest composite video capture card you could possibly find and hope it works just for your testing. And if you're looking for somewhat decent, I was supposed to have this video done like a month ago, but I kept getting sidetracked with other stuff. So I hope to have this out soon. And I also hope to show it on both a Mac and a PC. And if I'm brave enough, even Linux, just to show that anybody could start capturing with a very cheap computer nowadays, as long as you don't go crazy. I think I'm going to be doing 720p captures and 480p captures. So, certainly no 1080p 60 or 4K. But once again, that's not the point. I just want to show people how to get started. So hopefully those basic tips might be a help, and hopefully this video turns out to actually be good and this is a decent product. Kyle Lanehart said he's been seeing comments online about polymer capacitors versus electrolytic capacitors. Has anybody used polymer caps when recapping a CRT or console? And if so, what are the advantages or disadvantages of using them? Respectfully, I think that question's better suited for the Retro Roundtable. I know just enough to be dangerous, but not enough to answer that confidently. However, I will say that every time that I've bugged people that are smarter than me about this, they've always kind of agreed that when you're doing recaps, you should stick to the same kind of capacitors that you're replacing. So surface mount for surface mount, SMD versus just basic electrolytic caps. So I don't know. Maybe if you post that one on the Retro Roundtable, we'll get to it. And I'm sure there's a solution, by the way, where one would be better than the other, where there's a better type of cap to buy. I'm positive that has to exist. I just think if you're doing recaps, as a general rule, just kind of stick to what was already there. But I'd love to hear the experts dig into the polymer cap thing as well. So hopefully I'll try to remember to ask it there as well. But if not, maybe post over there. MC Boys wanted to know if I ever have that inner monologue that I think many of us do, where you see a new product come out for either a console or a platform that you don't already own, and you get really excited and you're tempted to buy everything for it. And of course I get that way. I mean, I spend all day long researching and working with developers about new stuff for all of these. But my advice is always the same to people on this, and it's what I've tried to really make clear in a lot of the other videos I've been posting lately. Like, for example, the Neo Geo ROM cart. I still get the trolls that are like, oh, why, what moron would spend $600 on this when you could buy, a Raspberry Pi for 20? And they're right and wrong. They're wrong to post on the video because it's not the point, but they're right in that starting out for something like, you use the Jaguar as an example. So starting out with the Jag, find the best emulator they have and play a couple of the games and see if that's even an interest to you at all. Like, for example, if you happen to know that you're a fan of the arcade game Tempest, I'd love that. So, okay, you've tried emulators, you know that you like Tempest. So go buy a Jag, pick up the Jag ST, SD, or maybe just even Tempest, and get one controller with the rotary mod on the bottom, so that way you could switch between regular use and rotary use. And now you have an awesome way to play Tempest, and you have a ROM cart that tries the rest of the games. And yeah, you've dropped some cash on it, but, now you know whether to go farther. And that's more than enough in most cases. For me personally, as weird as this sounds, if I pick up stuff that I really love, I'll always use the ROM cart just because it's easier, but I'll go buy the game. You can't see it in the shop, but I've slowly been rebuilding the collection that I had to lose a few years ago, and every game that I always like to play and that I always enjoy, I absolutely own. And I don't know why. I don't know, the developers of those games aren't losing money from that now, but for me it's just a thing. I don't know. But maybe I'm weird in that respect, but I guess that's just my best advice. If you're getting into a new platform and you're getting excited about something, try it on emulation first, and then just step by step into it. Otherwise, you'll end up dropping a ton of money on something where maybe a year later you go, why did I spend $2,500 on Jaguar stuff? So I don't know. That's just the best advice I can give, I guess. It's a Serial Wow had a question about Dreamcast Component. The question was, until the cable manufacturers come out with direct console to component cables, is the Retro Access SCART cable and a Shiny Bow currently the best way to get component video out of the Dreamcast on a CRT? I have not tried that combination. I would guess that both the retro access or the retro gaming cables, switchable SCART cable, and the shiny bow, I think those would both work fine. But Dreamcast, to oversimplify, Dreamcast's 480p sync combining needs to be done a very specific way. Otherwise, you get compatibility issues. So even though the one from retro access is done, it works on everything, including the weird finicky BVMs. I wouldn't be able to confidently say yes or no unless I tried that exact scenario. But on paper, yes, because both of those cables are switchable between 15 and 31 kilohertz. The shiny bow can accept both. So yes, at the moment it should work. But if you end up testing that with either cable and the shiny bow, please let me know. I'd really be interested to see if that works or not. My buddy Joelle had a couple of thoughts and opinions on the microphone that I switched to. I think he has the same one. And one of the things that he said is there's a gold circle on the side of it that dictates the direction. So that way I could talk to it sideways if I wanted to, or head on. So I'm talking to it sideways in this question just to see if it makes a difference. That's a good point. I never realized that, to be honest with you. I always just did it head on. I'd have to reposition where my swing arm is, but whatever. And he also said it has a built-in pop filter, which is kind of cool. I didn't end up getting another filter in front of this. I just got the spit guard filter over it. If people say I need it, fine, I'll pick one up. Those are cheap enough. I think I might even have a few laying around or something, but that's pretty neat. So I've been digging this one. I like the way that it cuts down on the background noise. I just really hate that now I have a camera or a microphone in my face in every shot, but who knows? Any opinions on this too, on where to position the mic? I could try to move the swing arm around so it's perpendicular or something, but I don't know. Thanks for the tip on the gold spot though. I probably wouldn't have even thought to look that up. Jim Nardacia asked, regarding recapping systems, don't the Model 1 Sega CDs also have a big problem with bad caps? Yes, absolutely, and I already warned everybody last week that I was going to forget one. So thanks very much for bringing that up. I'll definitely look into that, and I believe down below it was Dave Sobel said that he suggested the list of critical repairs. Yeah, I'm liking that idea more and more. So thanks for reminding me, Jim. I'll make sure to add that one to the list, and I'll try to see if I can make it a collaborative page. Definitely something that I think would be great on the wiki, which I know I keep talking about it, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes with it. Justin's really been trying a bunch of cool stuff, so hopefully we'll be able to launch that relatively soon, so stuff like this can just, anytime anybody has a really awesome idea like this, they could just be done instantly, and we don't have to worry about figuring out a way to make it happen or anything like that. Conrad Klaus was following up from the question of last week about using the PS1 AC adapter. So I suggested using the PS2 Slims adapter on the PS1, and he was hesitant because the adapter says 8.5 volts and the PS1's is 7.5 volts. Does that matter? It shouldn't, but I'm really glad that you double checked. So there's certainly cases where, like those generic power supplies that we've been recommending, they don't always match the exact voltage of the console, but it's totally fine because the circuits are designed to work within a large tolerance. And in fact, the medical grade equipment I used to use, don't do this by the way, just using this as an example, we were able to use between 8 and 24 volts on that motherboard. And just the higher the voltage, the more efficient the whole system was, just for that temperature and all that stuff. That's medical grade equipment, but it's just a good example because I was blown away when, the minimum voltage versus the highest voltage was such a wide swing. So I think you should be okay. Mr. Pete 1985 looked over the specs and he said it seemed fine as well. I think you should be fine with that, just especially because the quality of the PS2 Slim's AC adapter is pretty good. The only thing in the retro gaming world that I know is absolutely a no-no is the Neo Geos that run off 5-volt adapters. You definitely cannot put a 9-volt or 12-volt adapter in that one. So I'm pretty sure you should be fine. I'll message you directly if I'm wrong on this. I'm going to message a few other people now on that one. But I'm glad you asked the question, though, and I should have explained that all last week as well. Jeremiah Jackson is running a FrameMeister on a 1080p LCD TV and wants to move to a 4K OLED and wants to know if he has to worry about scaling. So, to be honest, that's something that I was concerned about when 4K TVs first were released. and I haven't found an average TV that's terrible at it. Overall, they do a decent enough job. You put them in game mode, and it does seem to help a tiny bit. I wouldn't call it an integer scale, but it definitely doesn't smooth it out too much. And I can speak personally about my OLED TV, and that I think it looks really great. I think a 4K scaler would do a much better job for 2D retro. But I don't. Overall, I don't think if you're buying a 4K OLED TV, I don't think you would worry at all about how it scales a 1080p retro image. I think at worst, it's going to be good enough where you're not going to hate it, and at best, I mean, it's all preference. But I like the way my LG looks. And as an example, when I was testing the DC HDMI, I really loved putting it in 960p mode and then letting it scale to 4K, because it seemed to me like a neat combination of really sharp integer scaling from 480p to 960, and then the TV did a really good job scaling that to 4K. So the smoothing ended up really, in my opinion, a lot of those Dreamcast games ended up looking like PS3 games to me. So it's something that I wouldn't worry about, and just go ahead and buy a 4K OLED and know that it's a badass, awesome TV. The only thing, in fact, I wouldn't suggest is if you're using it as a PC monitor and you leave your monitor on for long periods of time. Like my monitor on this desktop is on at least 12 hours a day, so I would never get an OLED monitor for that. But my TV is only on when I'm using it. And while I do get a little tiny bit of image retention, as soon as I switch to doing something else, it goes away in like a minute. So if you spend a lot of money on an OLED and you play a game for 4 or 5 hours, and then next thing you know, you still see the burn-in, don't freak out. Just watch a movie or something. By the 10 minutes into it, the image retention's gone, and you don't have to worry. So the burn-in is really only for things like if you leave a stock ticker program on 24/7 or something like that. So good luck with the OLED, though. I think you're going to like it. Mr. Pete 1985 said, speaking of Wii and the bug that makes 480p blurry, does that affect all Wiis, or are there some models with different DACs that will not cause the image to blur at 480p? For some reason, I'm drawing a blank on this today. So as far as I remember it, the later DACs that were kind of sharper didn't really have the issue. But I did have a hard time getting good captures of examples of this. So, I had originally planned on jumping back into doing a bunch of Wii captures and all that stuff. Then I was going to collaborate with other people on it, and all of that kind of fell to the wayside. So I'd like to kind of revisit that and talk to a few other YouTubers and people that do comparison stuff, and do a really good professional quality comparison of all the different Wii stuff, and really be able to demonstrate all of this. So I guess that's a really long way of saying I don't remember, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the software bug that Extrems found could take care of the original DACs and doesn't affect the newer ones. But once again, I don't really remember 100%. So sorry about that. Well, that's pretty much it for this week. Thanks to everybody who helped out with the whole microphone thing. I always want to make this as good as possible, but it's been over a year since the last time I changed the mic, at least I think. So, once a year, if I have to make a tweak, I don't think that's too painful, but I think I got the right formula now. I think I got this mic as close as I can for the weeklies. I'll wear the lapel mic up high, close to my mouth for any of the high production videos, and anything off camera, I could just talk into a closet to deaden the sound so there's no echo or much less background noise and all that. I still got to get a better swing arm. It was definitely not a smart move to buy a $20 swing arm, but I don't know if anybody noticed, but anybody watching on video might have seen the mic sink during some of these. But other than that, I think I'm good. So any other suggestions, let me know. But I do appreciate all the help. And for anybody new to the Q&As, any question you have at all, just please post it in the newest Q&A wherever it is that you're on the support platforms. So it doesn't matter if it's the YouTube join or Subscribe Star or any of those. Just wherever you found the newest video, post there. Because the way it's set up, I can't really go back through any of the other Q&As. And that's pretty much it. As always, thank you so much for all your support. Thanks for participating in the Q&As. I do really enjoy doing these, and I'll see you next week.